The phones were collected at the gate, not confiscated. Stored safely. That phrasing mattered. A woman in linen clothes smiled as she placed each device into a numbered pouch. No security guards, no metal detectors, just calm hands and practiced reassurance. Disconnection is part of the process, she said. You'll get them back. No one argued. They had all paid too much money to argue now. The retreat was called Stillwater. No website, no social media, no reviews. You found it through people. Quiet recommendations passed in low voices, usually after someone said they were tired in a way sleep didn't fix. 7 days of silence, reflection, and guided recalibration. That was the phrase used in the brochure. Recalibration. Jonah Hale read it twice before agreeing to come. He wasn't spiritual. Not really. But his sister had gone the year before, come back calmer, lighter, less reactive. She said Stillwater didn't change her beliefs. It just helped me see myself clearly, she said. Jonah wanted that. The retreat center sat far from anything recognizable. Forest on all sides. No visible fences, but no obvious way out either. Just a long gravel road that disappeared into trees. There were 14 participants. Different ages, different reasons. Introductions were brief. No last names, no professions. Who you are outside doesn't matter here, the facilitator said gently. Stillwater is about who you are when no one is watching. The first day was quiet. Meals eaten together, but without conversation. Long walks along marked paths. Journaling sessions with vague prompts. What feels unfinished? What do you avoid naming? Jonah found it uncomfortable, but manageable. The second day, they introduced the mirror. Each participant sat across from another in silence for 10 minutes, just observing. No expressions, no gestures. Notice what you project, the facilitator instructed. The mirror doesn't judge. Jonah's partner looked away halfway through. That night, Jonah dreamed he was being watched by people who weren't in the room. The third day, silence ended. Carefully. They allowed speaking, but only during guided circles. You could share, but only when prompted. No direct responses to others. You're not here to fix each other, the facilitator reminded them. You're here to reveal patterns. Jonah shared something small, safe, about always needing to be right. The facilitator nodded, made a note. Jonah noticed the notebook. That was new. After the circle, one of the participants pulled Jonah aside. Be careful what you reveal, she whispered. They remember everything. Jonah laughed it off. Retreats always attracted dramatic people. But that evening, during reflection, the facilitator mentioned Jonah's comment. Not by name, but unmistakably. Some of you associate worth with correctness, she said calmly. That creates distance. Jonah felt his stomach tighten. The next day, the exercises grew more specific. Participants were asked to rank moments of their lives in terms of emotional weight. Not trauma. Weight. Stillwater isn't interested in pain, the facilitator said. Only in influence. Jonah noticed that those who shared openly were asked more questions later. More sessions, more attention. Those who held back were left alone. At first, that felt merciful. Then it started to feel like absence. By day 5, Jonah realized something unsettling. The retreat wasn't trying to heal anyone. It was sorting them. People were being grouped during walks, seated differently at meals, paired with the same partners repeatedly. No one explained why. On the 6th night, Jonah woke to soft footsteps outside his cabin. Not approaching, passing, measured. In the morning, one of the participants was gone. No announcement, no explanation. Her seat at breakfast was simply empty. Jonah asked the woman beside him what had happened. "She completed early," she said, without looking up. "Not everyone needs the full process." The facilitator smiled at the table. "Stillwater meets people where they are," she said, "and releases them when ready." Jonah nodded along with everyone else. But inside, a thought had begun to form, slow and heavy. If this place could decide when someone was ready to leave, then someone else must be deciding who wasn't. And Jonah had the uncomfortable sense that Stillwater already knew exactly where he fit. By the 7th morning, Jonah stopped asking questions. Not because he trusted Stillwater, because questions didn't behave the way he expected them to. They didn't disappear. They echoed. The facilitators never answered directly. They reflected, reframed, redirected. Every question Jonah raised came back to him altered, heavier, as if it had been processed somewhere else before returning. After breakfast, they were divided into groups. No explanation. Not random. Jonah noticed patterns immediately. The people who spoke easily were grouped together. The quiet ones placed elsewhere. Those who challenged instructions gently were separated from those who complied instinctively. Stillwater wasn't organizing by personality. It was organizing by resistance. The exercise was called release mapping. Participants were asked to write down moments in their lives when they had let something go. Not losses, choices. Jobs left, relationships ended, beliefs abandoned. Then the facilitators asked them to circle the moment that had felt the most relieving. Jonah hesitated. He circled something from years ago, when he had stopped pushing back against a family expectation and simply stepped aside. The facilitator noticed immediately. "Relief can be a sign of alignment," she said gently, "or avoidance." Jonah felt the room tighten. Later that day, Jonah was assigned a one-on-one session. He hadn't requested it. The facilitator across from him spoke softly, as if volume itself could be disruptive. "You're very aware," she said. "That can be exhausting." Jonah nodded. "Awareness makes people visible," she continued. "Stillwater helps people decide what to do with that visibility." Jonah asked the question he'd been holding back. "What happens to people who don't fit?" The facilitator smiled. "Fit isn't a judgment," she said. "It's a direction." That night, Jonah noticed something new. Paths around the retreat were no longer equally accessible. Some were roped off, others newly marked. The signs didn't say restricted. They said integrated path. Jonah watched as a small group was guided down one of those paths after dinner. Not led, invited. They returned hours later quieter, calmer, different. Jonah overheard fragments of conversation. "I didn't realize how much I was holding." It finally made sense. "I feel settled." Jonah felt a chill. Settled didn't sound like healed. It sounded like placed. The next morning, Jonah's journal was returned to him. He hadn't realized it had been taken. A note was tucked inside. "Notice what you write when you feel unseen." Jonah flipped through the pages. Certain passages had been underlined, not corrected, interpreted. Jonah confronted one of the facilitators quietly. "I didn't give permission for this," he said. The facilitator didn't look surprised. "You gave consent when you arrived," she replied. "Stillwater holds what people can't." Jonah's chest tightened. That afternoon, another participant left early. This time, Jonah watched. The woman hugged the facilitator, thanked her, and walked calmly down the gravel road. No ride arrived. She walked, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Jonah realized something unsettling. People weren't leaving Stillwater confused. They were leaving resolved. But resolved into what? That evening, Jonah found himself seated at a different table, between two people who rarely spoke. Both avoided his eyes. One of them whispered as they cleared plates. "They're deciding where we go next." Jonah asked, "Go next where?" The answer came without hesitation. "Back." Jonah felt his breath catch. "Back to what?" The person shook their head. "That depends on how much resistance you have left." Jonah lay awake that night, listening to the forest. He realized Stillwater wasn't about silence. It was about reducing friction. People who resisted less were guided toward calm exits. People who resisted more were kept longer, not to punish them, to soften them. Jonah stared at the ceiling as a new, darker thought settled in. If Stillwater could teach people how to let go, then it could also decide what they were supposed to let go of. And Jonah wasn't sure his turn was going to be gentle. The man who refused was named Caleb. Jonah had barely noticed him during the first days. Quiet, observant, always sitting near the edge of the circle, never volunteering, never disappearing either. Caleb didn't resist loudly. He resisted by not yielding. During the morning session, when the facilitator invited participants to name what they were ready to release, Caleb said nothing. The silence stretched. Normally, the facilitator would reframe it, offer guidance, move on. This time, she waited. Caleb finally spoke. "I don't want to release anything," he said calmly. "I want to understand why you need me to." The room stiffened, not shocked, alert. The facilitator smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Stillwater doesn't need anything from you," she said. "It offers." Caleb nodded. "Then I'll decline." No one spoke. Jonah felt his pulse in his ears. Decline wasn't one of the options that had been presented. The session ended early. That afternoon, Caleb was asked to attend a private walk. Not invited. Asked. Jonah watched him follow the facilitator down one of the forest paths, the one marked with the small, unobtrusive sign, Integration Route. They didn't return before dinner. At the evening circle, Caleb's seat was empty. No explanation was given. The facilitator spoke gently. "Not everyone completes Stillwater in the same way," she said. "Some people need a different kind of closure." Jonah felt cold. This wasn't early completion. This was something else. That night, Jonah heard voices outside his cabin. Low, controlled. One voice was Caleb's. It wasn't raised. It wasn't angry. It was tired. Jonah couldn't hear the words clearly, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone explaining. Someone else insisting. Then, silence. The next morning, Caleb was back. But he wasn't the same. His posture had changed. His eyes avoided contact. When Jonah tried to speak to him during breakfast, Caleb shook his head almost imperceptibly. Later that day, during journaling, Jonah noticed something chilling. Caleb's notebook was gone. Not misplaced. Removed. Jonah confronted a facilitator quietly. "What happened to Caleb?" he asked. The facilitator considered him for a moment longer than necessary. "Caleb reached a boundary," she said. "Stillwater helped him move past it." "Did he want to?" Jonah asked. The facilitator's answer was immediate. "Want is a temporary state." That sentence stayed with Jonah all day. During the next exercise, Jonah noticed that Caleb was no longer grouped with the rest of them. He was placed alone, always near a facilitator, always observed. Stillwater hadn't expelled him. It had contained him. Jonah realized then that Stillwater didn't punish refusal. It treated it as a condition, something to be managed. That night, Jonah found a page slipped into his journal. No handwriting, just a printed sentence. Resistance doesn't disappear, it gets redirected. Jonah looked up instinctively. No one was watching him, which made it worse. On the sixth evening, Caleb spoke again, unprompted. "I don't feel clearer," he said. "I feel smaller." The facilitator stepped closer. "That's because clarity often feels like loss at first," she said softly. Caleb shook his head. "No, this feels like being adjusted." The word hung in the air. Adjusted. The facilitator's tone cooled slightly. "Stillwater exists to help people align with reality," she said. "Not fight it." Caleb met her eyes. "Whose reality?" he asked. No one answered. The session ended abruptly. That night, Jonah didn't sleep. He understood now. Stillwater didn't need people to believe. It needed them to resolve, one way or another. People who complied left calmly. People who resisted were stayed with until they didn't resist anymore. Jonah lay awake, staring at the ceiling, as the final truth settled in. Stillwater wasn't a retreat. It was a sorting mechanism. And Caleb wasn't the exception. He was the warning. Jonah stopped trying to leave. That was the moment Stillwater changed him. Not because he believed in it, not because he accepted its language, but because he understood the cost of refusal now. The facilitators never threatened him, never raised their voices, never locked a door. They didn't need to. They stayed close, present, attentive, always available. Jonah noticed how often someone was nearby when he hesitated, how questions arrived before he asked them, how explanations were offered before confusion fully formed. Stillwater wasn't reacting to him. It was anticipating him. Caleb avoided everyone. He spoke less each day, moved more slowly, as if his body was learning to take up less space. On the final morning, the facilitator announced the completion walk. Those who felt resolved would be guided out. Those who didn't would remain for further integration. No one asked how long that might take. People stood when their names were called, one by one. Jonah's wasn't. Caleb's wasn't either. They exchanged a glance, not fear, recognition. Later that afternoon, Jonah was called in for a private session. The facilitator spoke gently. "You're very close," she said. "You just need to stop resisting the form." Jonah asked quietly, "What happens if I don't?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "Stillwater will stay with you." That night, Jonah packed his bag, not to escape, to be ready. At dawn, he walked toward the gravel road alone. No one stopped him. That frightened him more than if they had. Halfway down the path, a figure stood waiting, not blocking the road, standing beside it. The woman from the gate. "You're leaving early," she said softly. Jonah nodded. She smiled. "Stillwater will remember you," she said. "If you ever feel unfinished, you'll know where to return." Jonah walked past her. No chase. No call after him. The forest swallowed the road. Weeks later, Jonah was home. Nothing felt wrong. That was the problem. He noticed how easily he let things go now, how quickly he softened opinions, how often he reframed conflict before it could form. Friends said he seemed calmer, lighter, more agreeable. Caleb never reached out. Jonah searched for him online. Nothing, no posts, no mentions, as if he had been edited out. One evening, Jonah found his retreat journal. He hadn't written in it since returning. Inside, a page had been added. He was certain of that. A single sentence, printed. "You released more than you realized." Jonah closed the journal slowly. because the final truth had arrived too late to argue with. Stillwater didn't need to keep people. It only needed to change what leaving meant. People didn't escape it. They carried it. In how they spoke, in how they yielded, in how quickly they learned to stop resisting before resistance became visible. Jonah looked out the window at a world that suddenly felt easier to move through, smoother, quieter, and for the first time since the retreat, he felt something close to fear, because peace that comes from adjustment is indistinguishable from surrender.